Hi there and welcome to this short video on a very unusual, unique and largely forgotten about piece of British historical industrial artwork. The Camberley concrete elephant sculpture. Placed here almost exactly 60 years ago to the day. I'm going to hand over now to BBC News to give you a primer on the history of the elephant.
Now the British love a good statue. Perhaps a little less well known is the Camberley elephant. Don't know it? Well, here it is. And it's been there in Camberley for 60 years. As Steve Humphrey reports, the Surrey town remains proud of its unofficial mascot.
It is a majestic concrete elephant that's celebrating a jumbo anniversary. It is now 60 years since this famous landmark was created. And for nearly all of that time, it stood rather appropriately next to the A30, known back in the day as a trunk road. This concrete pachyderm was originally created for the Lord Mayor Show in London in 1963. A few seconds of film captured the moment. So why does Camberley have this concrete marvel? I popped along to the Surrey Heath Museum to find out more.
It's unique. It was built by a company called Trollope and Coles. The designer was Barbara Jones, and it was showing the development of concrete to be able to use in sewage pipes. So it's made up of a series of pipes, other than the ears, and then is in situ from June 1964, where it is today.
The elephant was created at a time when concrete was fashionable. Buildings like Portsmouth's Tricorn Centre and Chichester's Festival Theatre were making use of the material. When it had ears, it was identifiable as an Indian elephant. It suffered a bit of damage over the years, but isn't in bad shape for a 60-year-old.
Let's start off then with our location today, which is the medium-sized town of Camberley, located in southeast England, around 35 miles west of the capital, London. Camberley is a fairly affluent town, but it's unremarkable. It's most famous for being the location of the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, the British Army's officer training academy. Basically, the UK's equivalent of the United States West Point. The elephant sculpture is located on the A30 London Road, to the west of the town in the industrial outskirts. If you've travelled through Surrey, you've probably driven past the elephant without even noticing, unless you've got stuck in the perennial gridlock traffic of the Blackwater interchange queuing for the M3 motorway. So I could hear you ask, what is so special about this tatty and rather dirty looking stone elephant placed in front of an empty warehouse in Camberley? Well, to tell you the full historical story of this famous British icon, I need to take you back 60 years in time to 1963. I know my channel's demographic well. You're all Gen Xers and Millennials, and none of you would have been born yet. So here are some cultural signposts to take you back to the era. In August, Martin Luther King gave his famous I Have a Dream speech in Washington, DC. And later, in November, US President John F. Kennedy departed on a political trip to Dallas. He would not return. However, in the UK, nothing really much happened in 1963. So to reference November of that year, I'm going to show you a clip from the movie Carry On Cabby, which takes you back to the culture of Britain in the early 60s.
Be filthy. Pipe, please. Birds don't drive cabs. They can't. They haven't got...
That's her. Excuse me, this is the cab driver's cafe, isn't it?
That's right.
Oh, jolly good. Well, I'd like, oh no, what was it? Oh yes, a cup of cha and a wad.
Also taking place in November 1963, the 9th to be exact, is something as quintessentially British as a carry-on movie. The London Lord Mayor's Show and Procession. I'm sure you've all heard of the Lord Mayor of London, even if you're not British, from the famous children's folk story of Dick Whittington, the boy who ran away from home in Elizabethan England to seek his fortune in London and ended up as the Lord Mayor. The Lord Mayor of London is an 800-year-old appointment, and in medieval times he was the ruler of the City of London, the walled fortress. Today it's largely a ceremonial role. Not to be confused, of course, with the politically elected Mayor of Greater London, and the less said about this character the better. The Lord Mayor of London's appointment is steeped in 800 years of tradition and British pageantry. After his appointment, and every year, the City of London is cleared of traffic and there is a Lord Mayor's show and a Lord Mayor's procession. The Lord Mayor's procession usually starts at the Guildhall in the city and then loops for a few miles around the major city roads, taking usually around 2 hours, and there are tens of thousands of spectators. Like the appointment of the Lord Mayor, the procession is steeped in centuries of British tradition. Originally, the reason for the procession was for the Lord Mayor to present himself to the King and pledge his allegiance, and he was required to do this every year to maintain his appointment. Leading the procession, of course, was the Lord Mayor in a state horse-drawn coach, escorted by the 3 branches of the armed forces and the city police. But a feature of the 20th century was that the civil society were permitted to join in the procession, and this was usually either on foot or a series of horse-drawn or mechanical floats, usually sponsored by big business. Usually these processions had a theme, such as the Commonwealth or international trade. Although meant to be public street entertainment, big business saw the parade as an opportunity for free corporate advertising and one-upmanship against competitors. This is actually footage from the November 1963 parade, and the theme then was construction. So what does the London Lord Mayor's parade have to do with the concrete elephant in Camberley, 35 miles away? Well, the Lord Mayor's parade in 1963 was the reason for the elephant's construction. Stick with it. It may surprise you to know that in London in 1963 there were still large areas of bomb damage from World War II, left unrepaired due to the austere 1950s, where Britons were still subject to food rationing up until 1954. But the 1960s would be different. It was time for the first green shoots of economic growth, and in London there was a construction boom as the city was regenerated.
The face of London is changing as never before in all its 2,000 years of history. The best of the past stands proudly amid the vanishing ruins of the outdated and the unwanted.
One of the biggest civil engineering and construction companies in 1960s Britain was Trollope and Coles Limited, who were famous for previously building the Ministry of Defence main building in Whitehall. But in 1963, Trollope and Coles were actively lobbying for the contract to rebuild bomb-damaged Paternoster Square in the City of London. Coincidentally, in 1963, Trollope and Coles had been invited to provide a float for the Lord Mayor's procession in November that year. The publicity department saw this as an opportunity that could not be missed and pulled out all the stops. To create a unique and eye-catching company advertising float for the Lord Mayor's show in 1963, in September that year, Trollope and Coles commissioned famous and respected British artist Barbara Jones. Jones had previously made a name in the world of painting and sculpture and had provided pieces for the 1951 Festival of Britain. Very early on in her concept, Jones decided to use the fashionable building material of the day, concrete, as her main medium. Because in the 1960s and early 70s, concrete was seen as a modern and adaptable building material. Hence why today we are stuck with so many brutalist buildings from that era. In the early 1960s, Trollope and Coles were the leading producer of precast concrete pipes in the UK. So how could Jones make something out of his product that would capture the public's imagination but also advertise the company's premier product line? Thanks to the history of the British Empire from the 18th to early 20th centuries, British art regularly featured exotic animals from the colonies. By 1963, though, the British Empire was gone, replaced by a Commonwealth of independent countries. And so it is likely that Jones saw an opportunity to feature an Indian elephant both as a reference to British historical artwork, but also a tribute to the Commonwealth. Jones, having presented her concept to Trollope and Coles headquarters in London and the materials she intended to use, the company provided her assistance from one of its concrete plants near her home, the Trollcold plant in Camberley, Surrey. She was also provided with a team of workmen and a foreman to build her sculpture. The sculpture was completed in late October 1963, and here we see it in pristine condition. An Indian elephant constructed of all stock Trollope and Coles concrete pipes and fittings. Only the ears and eyes are specially manufactured. The sculpture weighed 12 tonnes and was bolted to a specially strengthened low-loader trailer. The Mahout, which is the Indian name for an elephant rider, sits in a saddle featuring a modern building behind him constructed of plywood. I imagine the Mahout for this display was simply a Trollope and Coles employee of Indian descent who was press-ganged into riding the sculpture on the day. The two girls dressed in saris at the front are probably Anglo volunteers from the typing pool, dressed up for the day, sat very precariously under a 1-ton concrete pipe that's not secured that well, as we'll see in a minute. Neither cultural appropriation or health and safety were much of a thing back in 1963. With the sculpture fitted and the low loader and HGV decorated for the show, on the 8th of November 1963, the whole assembly set sail from Trollope and Coles Yard in Camberley for the City of London. Such an unusual sight made the public stop and stare, and fortunately for us, a bystander captured the moment on camera. I've superimposed their photograph onto a modern street view image of the London Road in Camberley to show you what the elephant moved to London would have looked like. On a cool, dry but overcast London morning of the 9th of November 1963, the Lord Mayor's show got underway with the procession. All that is left now as a record of this day is this very grainy 8mm home city film kept in the British Film Archive. And here for a few seconds is the Trollope and Coles float featuring Barbara Jones's elephant sculpture. And again, from another angle, taken by an American tourist on their home city camera, is the float going past. Thankfully, Jones appears to have achieved her aim and made the float eye-catching enough for stills photographers from the press of the day to capture it on camera. So we have a very high-resolution capture of what the elephant looked like on the Lord Mayor's parade that day. This photograph is true colour, so you'll note that the elephant is actually concrete grey, not white as it is now, and the building behind the Mahout is coloured yellow. The low loader is carpeted in yellow carpet, and bizarrely for some reason the truck cab is painted pink. After the parade, the float was returned to the Camberley concrete yard and was disassembled, but Trollope and Coles headquarters gave no direction to the yard what to do with the elephant sculpture, so it languished in a backlot for about 6 months, until the yard manager decided to use it as an advertisement for the yard itself, and mounted the elephant sculpture on a large bore concrete pipe and placed it on the yard facing the A30 London Road in July 1964. There are 2 accounts as to what happened to the pipe the elephant was carrying in its trunk. One account, and the one I prefer, is that it fell off one night spontaneously. The other, less exciting, is that Camberley Council declared it as unsafe and ordered the Trollope and Coles Yard to remove it. You can also note that in the 5 years between 1964 and 1969, the elephant had been painted its distinctive and now famous white colour. In 1969, Trollope and Coles relocated the Camberley concrete plant to make way for construction of lucrative industrial buildings and offices on the site in the 1970s. The elephant was considered a landmark by this point and was left behind as the land was redeveloped. In 1996, Trollope and Coles ceased to exist, being acquired by the multinational Kavanagh Group, and the land the elephant stands on was sold off. But in a clever move when Trollope and Coles sold the land, there was a restrictive covenant placed on the property that the elephant cannot be moved due to its acquired status as a landmark, and also any tenant must maintain it. Sadly, in 2024, urban decay has caught up with the elephant's location. The warehouse behind it is empty, as is the office to its right. On occasion, the elephant has been subject to practical jokes. Somebody once painted it pink, and then in 1987, somebody decided to paint polka dots on it. Also, after this period, at some point, the elephant's ears were stolen. Occasionally, over the years, Camberley historical volunteer groups have repainted the elephant white, but it is not yet listed or protected by English Heritage or Surrey Council, which I really think it should be. The elephant is looking a bit tatty today and certainly needs another spruce up, possibly by Surrey Council. And that concludes our short history on the famous Camberley elephant sculpture. Thank you so much for watching to the end. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like so other people get to see it.